Okay. I'd like to call to order the Township Council meeting for September 1st, 2020. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Concord Township is live streaming this meeting. If anyone else is recording, I see Mr. Tversky is set up, and it's not interfering with the conduct of the meeting, so it's perfectly acceptable. First item on the agenda is the approval of the public meetings for August 4th regular meeting. Do I have a motion to do so? Do we have a second?
Seconded.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next is the total expenditures of the month of $542,911.26, made up of an August payroll of $161,123.39, current bills totaling $204,674.69, and current sewer bills totaling $177,113.18. Do I have a motion to approve those bills?
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I have to put my glasses on. Do we have anybody here from the state police this evening? Seeing none, I gotta take the glasses off. So, Sewer Department, Mr. Gillespie?
Raise our hand. Okay. The monthly activity report for August. Both the main plant and Riviera plant continue to meet discharge requirements within the parameters of the NPDES permits, and the operations staff performed 13 lateral inspections as required for resale during the month of August. The sewer engineer is preparing specifications to add a chemical storage building to allow chemical dosing at plant level to eliminate long underground service lines. And I believe we'll have a few items later on in the agenda that will refer to the sewer department. That's the end of my report.
Thank you. Code Enforcement Officer Mano is not here this evening, but his report is made part of the record. Planning Commission, Mr. Jewelson is not here. The only thing they had to report is they did not meet on August 17th. They had no business to conduct. The agenda meeting is scheduled for September 14th, 2020, and the public meeting is scheduled for September 21st, 2020. Solicitor, Mr. Donahue.
Excuse me, please be advised that there'll be a hearing before Judge Whalen on September 11th at 9 a.m. regarding Concord Ventures. There's a motion that has been filed by the applicant developer to expand the record, which the township and the neighbors are opposing. Thank you.
Okay. Township Engineer, Nate.
Sure. Good evening. Can everybody hear me okay? Obviously, August was an extremely busy month for engineering and township staff. And before I get to the two storm events earlier this month, just two updates from previous meetings. I spoke to PennDOT regarding the 322 and Concord Road Bridge schedules. Both are currently on the same schedule. There's no updates to provide. Again, I'll continue to monitor and provide updates every month on those. Second, I did talk to PennDOT regarding complaints about safety at the intersection of Schoolhouse Lane and Baltimore Pike. They will evaluate that and likely make some striping and signage improvements. We discussed the ability for the township to possibly ban left turns from Schoolhouse on the Baltimore Pike. PennDOT indicated that we had that ability to do so, but PennDOT and myself, we both agreed the data did not support that at this time, and we'll continue to monitor that intersection. The two payments tonight on the agenda, we are closing out the dog park and volleyball court projects. Those are complete. I can happily report, I drove by the dog park this evening. There was not one parking space available in the additional parking lot, and it was packed full of dogs and people, which is exciting. So that was cool to see. So we will close that project out tonight. We will also have the final payment for our LED replacement project. That is where we replace the LED signals throughout the township through a PennDOT grant. So both of those will be complete and closed out tonight. And then next month, we will have the final paperwork to close out the road program, which is substantially complete as of about 2-3 weeks ago. Transitioning briefly, and Amanda will talk a little further on the storm events. Obviously, Concord Township suffered some hyper-local storm events both on August 4th and August 7th. Personally, I was out here the next day, August 5th, observing the damage, talking to residents, talking to business owners, and taking a look at the situation, both after the event of the 4th and the 7th. I ran some quick calculations. These are by no means official data. The township sewer plant and one of our pump stations, we do collect rainfall data. And on the event of the 4th, which was essentially the first hurricane tropical storm that came through during the week, the treatment plant received about 5 inches of rain, and one of our pump stations in the northeast side of the township received over 7 inches of rain. Both of those were over 6 hours. So, again, that's a storm event that ranges anywhere between 100 to 500 year type storm event, which is obviously not insignificant. The second storm, unfortunately, was actually a little bit worse. Again, everything being already saturated, stream levels, groundwater already high. So getting a double whammy there with that storm on Friday night. I live literally 4 miles away, and we barely got a blip of it, which is really wild. Again, that was about a 1 hour storm event, and at the treatment plant, we received 5 inches of rain. That essentially equates to a 500-year storm, which is, again, that's just off the charts. So both significant events, and then having them back to back, obviously, is a big struggle. Observing all the damages, throughout the township, various sites, Newland Gristmill especially got hit both times. The township, literally as early as Saturday and that Friday night, was on top of the damage. Public Works, subcontractors that we have on call. Probably 4 or 5 major issues that were resolved within that week include we had to close Featherbed Lane, the culvert over top. We lost the road there. A water main broke on Winding Way, washed out the road there. Some inlets and piping collapsed on Running Brook. We've repaired that. Kirk Road, we lost the side of Kirk Road over by BYC. That's been repaired. And similar to Matson, we lost the side of the road there. Every situation is unique on why and what happened. Again, we continue to look into some of these issues. We still have issues that remain unresolved. Amanda and I met with probably 10 different residents throughout the course of the morning this morning, still trying to resolve some of these open-ended issues. Our focus was obviously on health, safety, welfare of the public, traveling public of the roads, focused on those. We're now getting to some of these secondary concerns that are still issues, but we have a little bit more time to address. So I think there'll be more to speak on that in the future, as council would like. I could turn it back over to Amanda. That's pretty much all I have, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Nate, the only thing, and I think council probably remembers, I think last year we talked about inventorying and basically, I guess Mr. Gillespie was the champion of this for the last couple of years, checking all the stormwater inlets within the township. I know in some of the neighborhoods we still have brick inlets, and I know that when we've done road programs, we had to repair them. I think in light of these storms, as abnormal as they were, we should put a full court press on that project for this upcoming year, just making sure that everything is cleaned, is functioning, and probably should put it on some sort of regular maintenance schedule, for instance, in the fall. Make sure we vacuum them out, things of that nature.
Yeah, I can speak to Amanda.
And one other thing, if you would not mind, because I wrote these numbers down, but if you can email me those rates of rain and what magnitude of storm that was, I'd appreciate it, just for my own information.
Absolutely.
Nate, you had mentioned the PennDOT discussion that you had regarding Schoolhouse Lane and Route 1. Could you elaborate a bit more on that discussion and the conclusion? So if I understood your report correct, we do have the ability to prohibit left turns onto Route 1, but you and PennDOT agreed that it was not warranted?
I think that's a fair summary, yes, John.
And did we do some studies on that, or just in terms of a little bit more color given the feedback? And it is, having been to that intersection, it is a fairly dangerous movement.
Yeah, I think it's something we want to continue to monitor. If we ban that left, it's obviously going to have repercussions throughout the area, other intersections, Cheney Road, Stony Bank, the traveling public. I believe, and I don't want to quote anybody at PennDOT, but I think the short version of it was, again, the accident data, and frankly, that's how we evaluate a lot of this. The accident data did not support issues with that left turn movement. That's just not an accident that we're seeing happen.
Okay, thank you. If you could, Dave, so we can just keep going and you can answer that, take up that question at that time. Amanda?
Can everybody hear me pretty good? even with the mask. So I just want to add on to the storm comments as well, that, we're still uncovering damage. So with a storm like that and how quickly and fast everything came and the damage, the township in one night had over $100,000 in damage. If we had gotten another storm 2 days later, we would have had even further damage. So I think it's important and a perfect segue for what I'm about to get into between the audit and our fund balances and having healthy fund balances and, sort of being able to further plan in the future. I think, unfortunately for all of us, these are realities, these type of storms. That, how many years was that, 300 and some, whatever you said, Nate? I'm not an engineer, but as a homeowner, and you realize that these storms are coming so fast and furious that it's creating a lot of damage, and Mother Nature is not kind when it comes to water, unfortunately. So additionally, I just want to add, we've done a lot of calls and responses in areas where a lot of their stormwater facilities can be private or HOA based. So I just want to sort of get the word out again that, folks know what you're buying, know what your responsibilities are in maintenance. We're happy to look up and help in any way that we can. We've met with a ton of folks knowing that a lot of their issues were private based. We try to offer help whenever we can. And I also like to go out and meet with folks so they see a face and know that someone's trying to assist. So, but we can't do everything. Some of that falls on the homeowner and some of that falls on an HOA. So we're trying to work with everyone. And, thanks to Nate and our contractors and everyone for all the response that we had after that storm, because it's been a lot of hours spent. On to the audit. So, as promised, I like to do a quick little presentation. Nothing too long to bore folks. You can always read my audit online. Also, I will point out that Cindy Leitzel and Stella Economides are here, our auditors, to answer any questions that council may have. So with that, I think, highlights, I'll hit governmental activities. It was a clean audit, no findings. Our long-term debt, total debt, $12.1 million roughly. Out of that, the sewer portion is a little over $4 million. Our fund balances as of 12/31/19, general fund was about $2.6 million. Highway aid was roughly $500,000. Open space fee and lieu fund, which is the money from the developers, which is if everybody passed pickleball courts, that's money we used to fund that project. That's $1.7 million. Open space fund, which is the tax revenue fund that pays down the debt service and purchases land, is $2.8 million. Capital reserve fund, $8.9, almost $9 million. And in that fund, I always like to point out, about 90% of that fund is earmarked. It is tied up in agreements and contracts and things like that. So that fund definitely is a little bit different in terms of how it's used. Tree fund, we have $529,000. Fire hydrant fund was $179. That usually results in a payment. So we don't normally have money stored in that account. That account directly pays out the cost of the fire hydrants. So the reason there was a little bit of balance left in there is because there was a bill paid into the new year. And then the library fund, same thing, $27,000 in that fund. And the reason there was money in there is because, again, we pay certain bills and there was money sitting in there. So notable governmental interfund transfers. So towards the end of the year, council committed $1.5 million for future land purchases. That was money that was earmarked in the capital reserve fund. $1 million was dedicated for trails, parks, and recreation. That was also from the general fund to the capital reserve fund. And there was $1 million dedicated for open space purchases, which was from the general fund to the open space reserve or tax fund. And then additionally, we have annual debt service that goes into our sinking fund as part of our transfers. Now, this page is always hard to see. I was hoping to try to make it as large as I could. This is for those who want to look at our audit online. This is page 48 of that. I like to show this because it shows all the activities and the fund balances and changes in your fund balance. and I think it's a good indicator of where you're coming in on budget. So interestingly, this year, we were pretty much dead on revenues, where we wound up with sort of excess revenue was our expenditures. We had 400 and some $1,000 that didn't get realized this last year, and some of that had to do with multiple areas. We had a very mild winter, so we didn't spend all the money we would have normally spent between staff, overtime, contractors, supplies, which is roughly over $100,000 in that bucket. Additionally, engineering services actually came in under budget, roughly $100,000. We had personnel. There was an inspector we were hoping to hire that we haven't been able to get to yet. That was a portion of that. There were some highway construction projects that got deferred. Our workers' comp actually came in way less. And we had some projects like the AME Church that were left over that we're still working on. So those round out pretty much the majority of that. So I just wanted to point that out. It's a good page for people to have a quick snapshot of where our budget is, how we came out, and what we did. And this is my second year of numbers, and I was happy to see that we have gotten a lot closer to our target in terms of the revenue, because that's pretty good budgeting, actually. So from there, so hard breathing in the mask after a while. Where does my money go? So we get this question all the time, especially once the school taxes and things come out. A lot of folks tend to think that it all just comes here. I like to point out consistently that the average taxpayer in this municipality pays $327 a year for township services. Here's how your money is allocated. So we have the general fund, which I just talked about, the governmental activities. That's what's in this fund. You have $96 that goes towards general purposes, which is people, buildings, programs, everything. And then so $152 goes to that fund. And then $56 of that goes to the fire company directly. Additionally, for those that pay the fire hydrant fee, $46 of their monies goes there on estimate. The library fund, about $40 of your, and again, this is out of the 327 average, goes to the library. And about $89 goes to the open space fund. And I like to really point that out too, because $96 goes for general purposes and $89 goes to open space. So you're roughly almost the same dollar going towards the protection of land, which I think is important, and I know that's a huge priority for council. So I wanted to make sure and point that out. And then this year. So COVID, as everybody knows, has definitely had some impacts for all of us. I mean, between the unknowns, we lack control over a lot of the things that are happening. They're dictated to us, just like you as business owners. A lot of the things are done at the state level, down to the county, and then we're sort of in the know from there. But that lack of control and those type of closures are difficult to work around. I know everybody is dealing with the same. You know, you have to reinvent local government services. I think anybody in here knows it's one of the things I hate about local government. But, you know, we're like the last ones to get the cool stuff. So, like, while the rest of the world has been doing, remote opportunities, working from home and doing all these things, you don't really see that in government services. I was really proud of our staff. They pivoted quite well. I have multi-generational staff, all different. Everybody has different things at home, and we were able to transition extremely quickly. We were actually one of the second municipalities in Delaware County to be open to the public. And I want to be sure and thank our emergency management team for that. Fred Field, Bob Bassick, Terry Grant. We really dove into a lot of trying to keep people protected and working on different things here that we could do with our staff. Our staff is not large by any stretch of the imagination, but you know, we have quite a few folks, and we wanted to make sure we were keeping everyone safe. With that, personnel and policy impacts, definitely seeing this year. Revenue loss. Right now, we're projecting about 10% of a deficit, which is mainly attributable to Act 511 taxes, which is your LST real estate, although our real estate's actually been doing pretty good, and I'm looking at my realtor over here. charges for services, licenses, permits, so we have known costs on the expense side, and when those revenues, don't come in, some of those pay for those known costs. So what I will point out, though, is that we are faring pretty well, namely because we don't have earned income tax, and we don't rely on that. So a lot of the municipalities, the state DCED, Department of Community and Economic Development, is suggesting that municipalities use models of 15 to 20% loss, pretty simply. And luckily for us, we're not in some of those boats. So we're really looking at potentially about a 10% deficit. But luckily, we have a very healthy fund balance that can handle some of those swings. So that's where we're at. We've been keeping council abreast, and I'll continue to keep the public abreast as we're evaluating those impacts. Additionally, storms, as you heard, storms are impacting our budget as well. While we budget for emergencies and things like that, if we get multiples of those Friday night moments on August 7th, that definitely is going to put us in a situation. And a lot of times we hope that sometimes the state steps in depending on how much damage the county has, but we're not sure actually on that storm if we're going to see any money from the state to assist with some of that cleanup. When we start thinking about 2021, I'll go back to that first bullet of the unknowns. We still don't know what's going on. Obviously, we're still in a holding pattern. What we are being told from the state level is there are definitely going to be areas that we are going to notice significant decreases, potentially in our liquid fuels funding. They're projecting, telling us to project that we could be 50% down off the monies that we receive. We receive approximately, $600,000 for that road program. So that definitely is going to have an impact. Our balance at the end of this year, I think, was roughly 400 and some thousand. So, it definitely could have an impact. Potential freeze, there could be freezes on grants, current grants we have that we haven't used yet, and then new grant opportunities, which is another point to point out. We're reprioritizing capital projects and timelines. Obviously, we lost an entire quarter of construction. Those of you in the industry felt it the worst. Those of you who rely on that industry felt it the worst. So, we're looking at that. There's potential cost increase for goods and services. Additionally, I know folks, as we're planning for the 2021 budget, reassessment is upon everyone. And that's a zero net income for us. We actually have to adjust to make sure that we're not bringing in more than we currently were. And then storm impacts, again, we're discussing actually this next week, mitigation planning and budgeting and looking at the overall pictures of the storm activity and where are the areas that we can do the most impact, the most bang for our buck. And I know I'll be talking to council a lot about that because I think that really impacts our residents depending on what projects we can take on.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, that's all I got.
All right, that being said, we have public comment. We also have our auditors here, Cindy Lightsell and Stella Economies. Cindy, do you want to add anything?
Amanda did a very good job in terms of summarizing. Concord Township is strong. That's obvious. But
Thank you.
have any questions?
I have none. What I'd like to do is it's time for public forum, public comment. And since we have Cindy and Stella here, if anyone has any questions or comments regarding anything with the audit, I would prefer to do them now so that way they can leave if we're done with their portion of the program. Are there any questions regarding the budget or any of the presentations? If you please come forward and give us your name and address, and we will gladly try to answer those questions. Yeah, maybe Cindy steps aside.
Testing.
Figure out what he's saying. Let's see where he goes.
Got to get right up in there.
I won't be shy. Josh Twersky, 1 Cedar Grove Drive, Concord Township. Just some various points to make regarding the budget. I was wrong. I predicted that there was going to be a $500,000 surplus in 2019 when we did the budget last year. It was a little over 700,000.
Thank you.
Surprise, surprise.
Well, it's one thing, it's consistent, because you're usually wrong on a lot of things, so go right ahead.
So, moving on, in 2019, the general fund had expenditures, actual expenditures of a little over $3.4 million. And a surplus, as I mentioned, of a little over $704,000. That's almost 21, a little over 20.5% the surplus is of the expenses. You're getting better. 2018 was almost 34% with a 1.2.
Is there a question here somewhere, Josh?
Yeah. I got to set the foundation, though. Thanks, Dom. 2017 was 42%. Almost $1.5 million surplus.
Josh, I have the minutes from all the meetings last year where you reminded us of this every month, so I think we're familiar with those numbers.
Well, I'm not sure that.
Do you have a question? Do you have a
Some
question?
new people. I do.
Is there a question there somewhere? Let's just move on, please.
There's a question. What are we, and in 2016, 43.5% of actual expenditures. So over the last, and since 2010, so 10 years, we've had $12.1 million surplus. What are we doing wrong with our budgeting that we are so far off on both revenues and expenditures on an extremely consistent basis for the last 10 years?
I don't think that the budget, as I think you know, is the best guess at what the income and expenses will be. I do think in certain years, we do get real estate transfer taxes that are far in excess of what we budgeted. We sometimes get building permit fees and other taxes than those that are paid by the taxpayers of Concord Township. Very hard to budget for those numbers. So that's been, in my opinion, what has happened over many of those years. We would get a sale of a project like one of the apartment buildings, and we would end up with $200,000 or $300,000 in transfer tax, unexpected, usually the last quarter of the year. That's something we can't budget for. We don't know when these properties are going to be sold, or if they're ever going to be sold.
I disagree with that.
Well, okay. What's
You
the
can,
next
you
question?
can know. And interestingly enough, if you look at other municipalities throughout Delaware County, Montgomery County, Chester County, they get much closer consistently on their budget,
Okay, good.
particularly over a 10-year period.
Maybe they're a better place to live, Josh.
Let's talk about the substance of audit. And I will disclose, I have been a licensed CPA in the state of Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for a couple decades now.
Good.
The cornerstone of an audit, see, it's actually like on the first page of the audit report. It says independent auditor's report. Independence is the cornerstone of certified public accountant audit. And what's interesting is the AICPA, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, actually puts out a plain English guide on independence for both CPAs and lay people so they understand the concept. And just quickly, it's just a few sentences. Independence is defined as follows. Independence of mind is the state of mind that permits a member, which our auditors are, they are members of the AICPA, to perform an attest service, which is an audit, without being affected by influences that compromise professional judgment, thereby allowing an individual to act with integrity and exercise objectivity and professional skepticism. That's independence of mind, basically independence in fact. The other one that's very important to CPAs is independence in appearance. And independence in appearance is the avoidance of circumstances that will cause a reasonable and informed third party who has knowledge of all relevant information, including safeguards applied, to reasonably conclude that the integrity, objectivity, or professional skepticism of a firm or member of the attest team, attest is a fancy word for audit, is compromised. So, I assume that our auditors are familiar with Rule 101, which is independence. My first question is the contract to hire the CPA bid out?
No, it is a consulting contract, and we do not have to bid out consultants.
But you could bid it out. How
Yes.
long has the same CPA been doing our audit?
I would think for Cindy, what, about 8, 10 years now? 13 years?
13, 14.
Oh, okay, well, I'm sorry I asked you, Cindy.
So how would council know that you're getting the right price?
We are very happy with the service, and in talking to colleagues in other municipalities, I think we're right in line on the fees we pay for those services.
When has that publicly been done that you've talked?
Josh, we don't have to do it publicly. We can appoint any consultant we want, and we're very happy with the performance of this firm and the independence of this firm.
What you would be doing a
This
favor to
firm-
the
this
residents if
firm-
you would bid it
This
out.
firm does not only do Concord Township, they do many, many authorities and municipalities, school districts, and the like.
Um,
Are you looking for work?
Council votes, I don't do municipality work, but
Oh,
thank
okay,
you
well,
for
thank
asking.
God for us.
I'd be glad to refer some people if you're going to bid it out.
I think we
Be a
can
good
handle it.
idea.
We do a pretty good job up here, in case you haven't noticed.
So
So to
council
be clear,
votes
that-
to hire, let's talk about independence, and here's where I think the problem lies. And it's this triangle that I've talked about before. Council votes to hire the CPA to audit the township book, correct? Those council members who vote to hire the CPA are all elected officials who run with the support of the local Republican Party, known as Concord Republicans. Correct. And the hired CPA gives contributions to the Concord Republic.
Did you read the meetings from last July? That's verbatim what you said back then. You said Josh Korsky then questioned the
I,
contribution
as a licensed
from
CPA,
Cindy
would
Lightsell had
never
made to the
touch it.
Concord Township Republican Party. Cindy Lightsell responded, yes, it is her right as a private citizen to support a political party of her choosing. That was the answer then.
I disagree. I think that
Well,
violates the independence.
Okay, well, we disagree.
And
Move on.
you-
Next.
you cannot do an audit if you are not independent.
Okay. Any other kind of questions? Thank you.
I
so
do
much.
for council, but we'll do them later.
You'll do anything else later? We just want anything to do with the auditor
Yep.
now?
Great.
They were kind enough to come out this evening. I don't want to ruin the rest of their evening. Anything else regarding the audit? Dave?
I need my reading glasses. That problem. David Cleary, 72 Schoolhouse Lane, Glen Mills, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
The
go ahead.
question on the independence, Ms. Lights will correct me if I'm wrong, but you and Mr. Donahue were the treasurer and chair of something called qualified judges, and were involved in the,
Wait a minute. Whoa, that's got nothing to do with this.
I can finish.
All right, finish your statement, and then we'll
Here,
let you sit down. 'Cause
on
there's no question, no
independence,
answer to this.
The local judge, Judge Capelli, had a serious tax-paying problem back when they chaired his committee. And from a citizen who values integrity and ethics in government, I find that concerning.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
And please don't interrupt me.
Okay. Anything else regarding the auditors? Cindy and Stella, I want to thank you for the fine job that you continue to do for our township. I look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you for coming out this evening. Okay, we'll just go to regular public comment, public forum, or whatever questions. I don't have my glasses on, but that looks like Maureen over there, right? Yeah.
Hi, Maureen Hewitt,
Address of Maureen, just,
19 Brook Lane, Chadsford, PA.
okay.
Donahue? Mr. Donahue?
You.
Is there anything we can do to help with Concord Ventures on September 11th? Is there anything the community can do to help you to dissuade that from happening?
No.
Man of many words over there. Would you like people to show up, or would you?
No, it's going to be a purely legal argument. Mr. Kaplan has made a motion, we're opposing it, and it's a legal argument.
Okay, so will, at the end of that hearing, will that be where the rubber meets the road? I mean, will he get to do what he wants if
No, essentially, Mr. Kaplan is trying to enter into evidence other facts that did not take place during the course of the 22 different hearings, thousands of pages of testimony, hundreds of pages of exhibits. And it's our position and the neighbor's position that the record's been closed, the record is restricted to the record hearing. He's trying to expand that, and both sides will argue in that, and then the judge will make a decision. Then the next step will be on the merits of the appeal, and that will probably take place sometime, my assumption would be November or December.
Okay. All right. So this is just Mr., what's his name being Mr. What's?
Right, no, he has a right to do what he's doing,
Yeah,
and
sure.
he's doing it, and we're opposing it, and it's sort of preliminary to the main event, if I may say so.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, this 40 Beaver Valley Road, do you have any specific, obvious, it's going to being bought from the open space acquisition. Do you have any ideas about it or for it, or?
Yeah, we have a presentation later on in the agenda that we can speak to it, and then if you have any other questions about it, then we can talk about it then.
So I'll be able to ask questions about it after you
Yeah, that's fine.
thing.
No problem.
Also, Maureen, did you get the materials I left out? The resolution was out there, the press release, and the actual map at the
Yep.
table?
I do have that all right here.
Okay.
And speaking of this map, and maybe I just didn't know this, but did the First National Park take to the Valley property?
It has not yet. It is anticipated for later this year.
Okay, so presently it's still owned by Brandywine Conservancy,
The Conservation Fund.
the Conservation Fund.
Yeah, so it is anticipated to go into the First State National Historical Park this year.
Okay, and I have tried the new dog park. It'll almost make you laugh about it, but I won't go into it.
Thank you.
And there are lots of folks, whoever said earlier, folks, there are no spaces there. You're right. There are folks from across the way that have come in and used it. There's also lots of folks at the other dog park, and just figured it wouldn't be a first Tuesday of the month if I didn't mention the other dog
Yeah,
park.
no conclusions, no decisions have been made regarding the Bethel Road Dog Park.
But you do have that grant that you're going to do a.
We're trying to, as we said all along, I think, and Mr. Crossan, correct me if I'm wrong, we want to study the whole area there in light of some open space acquisitions we have in the pipeline. And from that will become evident to us what a good use for that property would be. And at that time, we would be better able to decide the future of the dog park.
Right.
Okay?
And all I've asked all the way along, and I'm reiterating one more time, just if I could be kept in the loop on that. I would really like to have a seat at the table of that study, but I know
Okay.
that's,
Once we get, Nate, you have something to
Yeah,
add to that?
just to clarify more, I don't want there to be any confusion on that. We have applied for a grant, do a master plan for that area. We have not received it. I believe we might hear sometime this fall. Certainly, if we hear that, we'll announce that. And that'll be a process that might take all of next year. So a lot more to come if we were to get that. If we don't get that, we'll revisit the situation.
Okay.
Thank you.
all right. Thank you so much.
Okay, anyone else? Josh? Oh, Dave, you got one more thing while you're here? We can do it? Yeah, well, no, go, you're closer, and then we'll do Josh right after you. No, don't worry.
Dave Cleary again, 72 Schoolhouse Lane. I want to follow up from the last meeting about the Public Safety Advisory Committee. There's a lot brewing. The state police is saying they're assigning more resources. I think the opportunity was missed 10 years ago when the Public Safety Committee didn't ever do anything with the public, didn't engage with the public, and didn't really. I brought with me the one thing they did. Strangely, they decided to move forward without any public engagement and capture what they thought were recommendations to parents. As a parent who's had some experience with a child's life being endangered at a school bus stop, I found materials provided to be very blame the victim and not very helpful.
That's got to be about 10 years old now?
You
That
talk
piece
when
is
my-
about 10 years old? That piece is about 10
Yes,
years
sir.
old?
And what have they done since they put this out? And
They are no
would've
longer, they are
thought-
no longer active, Dave. We mentioned that to you, and it is something we would consider.
And if you would please stop
Reinstituting, but
interrupting
we
me and let
don't-
me
I'm
finish
sorry.
my thoughts, sir. It is kind of rude. You do this every meeting.
Dave, I'm sorry, I thought you were done. I don't have my glasses
But
on.
you didn't. You always interrupt.
Okay, go ahead, Dave. I'm gonna shut
And
my
I
microphone
don't
off.
really find a lot of gratitude now that you all of a sudden, because I called you out on it, finally. You interrupted me 10 years ago, 11 years ago, when my son's life was threatened at a school bus stop. Didn't care about it. Just like you just did. That was as sick as it gets. What I'm saying is, I can be bigger than what you did to me, but it's not going to go down this path. Blame the victim, blame the family, type of materials, and that mindset. Let people like me be on the Public Safety Advisory Committee and bring experiences like I have. I stood duty as a safety officer for an air wing on the flight deck of an aircraft carrier. And when my own son's life threatened at a school bus stop by a vehicle, I am completely abstracted from the discussion. You can go through your pamphlet here that says, do this, do that. It should say include the parents in the dialogue with all the stakeholders involved as a starting point. And it should tell you exactly who to contact at the school. Principals aren't the right person. I followed up on that. They have a whole transportation department contact. And it goes through, and it's all do this and do that. I pulled from the internet, materials were put out by Concord Township yesterday, and as they did 10, 11 years ago, Concord Township, Garden Valley School District, and the state police refused to acknowledge that the school bus stop code for the state of Pennsylvania specifically says, let me get my reading. In no event shall the driver of a vehicle resume motion of the vehicle until the school children who have alighted from the school bus have reached a place of safety. The materials that were put out on Facebook and Twitter by Concord Township, it chose materials that didn't highlight that, and I pulled some other material off the web that highlight that it's unlawful to move until the child's safe. And what's frustrating with the brochure you put out and the mindset that still exists today is blame the kids. It's very clear that one of the big factors is also distracted drivers or drivers acting inappropriately around school bus stops. None of your materials, none of your discussions covered that. The other thing it says on the bottom of this, and I'll leave it if you have. It basically says our children's safety is in your hands, meaning the driver. And what's frustrating with the pamphlet, I would like the opportunity to participate as a citizen in the community to provide that diversity in mindset, so it isn't just blame the child, blame the parent, and also looks at other aspects, in particular for school bus safety. And as I said last time, the whole concern about joggers, what happened in Georgia, what's happened in our neighborhood, I can also cover off that perspective. And I think that you need diversity. You need to bring that public safety forum back and bring people in that provide a diverse perspective like mine. And I could probably tell you until I'm blue in the face I have some valuable experience to add, but it seems to get discounted. What can we do to get that Public Safety Advisory Committee back on its feet with all the tough discussions going on about implicit bias and other things that put people in our communities at risk? And like I said, one other thing, the Amazon delivery driver in our neighborhood. Very few people actually know that the gentleman's not here. Mr. Harding, it happened right across the street from his house. Guy who'd been having repeated bad problems with the state police. They actually gave him a chauffeured ride home after a second DUI, harassment, drunk and disorderly ride home, his third event. He put a shotgun in the face of an Amazon delivery driver and said, if I ever see you around here, racial slur, I'm going to kill you. And then later led the police on a high-speed chase through our neighborhood. that day, he actually got Black Lives Matter, he almost ran over a police officer, he got Blue Lives Matter, and my wife lost a sister to a drunk driver. Somebody running high speed through your neighborhood drunk is a threat. The perception is that his behavior was known and escalating, and the people on the street, family, felt powerless in getting a more aggressive or appropriate law enforcement action. We need to sit down and discuss how those things can be better, and you got to let people like me be at the table for the discussion. That's that point.
Thank you, Dave. Anything else?
Wrote a joke here on the budget. I think that of the $300 and some dollars, $10 to $20 each taxpayer pays for Mr. Donahue to not answer questions I ask.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
Also, the schoolhouse lane. One of the bigger issues, I live right there. We don't let our kids, they say not as they do, where kids learn to drive, they don't get to make left turns on Schoolhouse. The right turn is also a problem. I'm not sure, was that assessed, Mr. Klein? There's no right turn lane,
And that's looking at the entire intersection.
and that's as big a problem. And a couple, the business traffic and the cut-through traffic for the prison. You take away that left turn, that pretty much kills that way of prison cut-through traffic, the high-speed traffic from the prison. And we've been around the Capelli Moore Historical Preservation with the trailered vehicles making a left turn and/or making a right turn. We've been in the going from Schoolhouse to Route 1 lane, and a vehicle making a wide turn because it's yet again dragging its commercial trailer behind its dump truck and almost hits you as you pull up to that intersection.
Right.
And also getting stuck when they're trying to make a left turn and you're trying to make a right turn behind that dump truck with a 30-foot or however long trailer behind it, complicates the safety on that street.
If I might say something, Nate, will you write these comments down and put them into consideration when you talk to PennDOT? That's all, right?
Fair enough.
PennDOT's going to tell us, give us some insights in that. Thank you.
Two budget things that weren't audit related.
Um,
I went back and looked at the budget, and 2019, the salaries for the parks, item 454, were $20,700, but budgeted for $96,300. I realized I was at the concert that there's a
That was,
on-
excuse me, Jeff, before you get too much further along, we were budgeting in there to add some more staff to the Parks Department. That's why that number was budgeted so high, but we did not fill that job. That was not for programming, Dave. That was for a full-time park director.
The other part of the question is there was a constable, not the Concord Township, or wearing a constable uniform when I was at the concert. Nice event, not sure why
Good.
security was hired for it. Where's the money coming from to pay the constables that are here tonight
Comes
at
out-
that meeting, and where does the authority to act way come from?
We pay them out of the Concord Township budget. Mr. Donahue, I think, responded to a question you had about the constable services, didn't you? Okay, I'll turn that part over. But
Well, his
they do
answer-
get paid from here.
Let
Excuse me, Mr.
finish
Cleary,
then.
if I may.
Let me
Let him finish.
Let me,
you.
let me,
No,
Yeah.
we've paid enough money for you to not answer my
Dave,
question.
Dave, this is the last question, though, because we have to move on with the agenda, please. We've had almost 15 minutes.
You cut me off when I started, sir, with all
Okay,
due respect.
go ahead, but finish now, please.
As I pointed out, you can't just have anybody show up in a constable uniform. In my question to Mr. Mahoney, who should know the rules, unfortunately he's not here, for the conduct of a constable. They fall under the governor, and they're assigned their duties by the courts, and they also work on election day. They're not resources with any designated responsibility. Last meeting, I had a constable following me in the parking lot, under some direction from somebody. That is not official constable authority. He is getting private security direction from the council, correct?
Dave, is the question you asked was who pays for the constable? I answered that. Mr.
Who
Donahue,
provides them their direction tonight to follow.
We asked them, and I think Mr. Donahue might have stated this, in light of the COVID virus and the social distancing, we wanted someone here to basically be the monitor to make sure that people were coming in the room at the right time and we weren't over capacity.
The
That's the only
constable
thing
said
he's charged to do.
he's supposed to follow the citizens in the parking lot until they leave. He's
I
charged
know nothing about that, Dave.
about his
Well,
responsibilities.
Okay, is there another question here? I think we've
I didn't
answered everything.
appreciate the constable
Okay,
pretending like he had authority to follow me around in the
Okay.
parking lot.
I don't think we'll follow you around in the parking lot anymore,
He
Dave.
better not, because,
Okay.
that misconduct will not be.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you. Just so the record's clear, Mr. President, we did write to Mr. Cleary on August 14th of 2020. Letter was as follows: Dear Mr. Cleary, in response to your inquiry concerning the township's engagement of a constable at public meetings, please be advised of the following. 1, constables are elected peace officers and are not employees of the courts, the Commonwealth, and/or any other governmental agency. And 2, constables are considered independent contractors whose services are engaged by various governmental authorities, including the courts in Concord Township. As you are probably aware, there are certain mandates and/or guidelines issued by Governor Wolf in connection with COVID-19. In accordance with these guidelines and mandates, the township has limited the number of persons who may be seated inside the public meeting room. The constable and the township employees have been engaged to monitor the number of persons entering and leaving the room so as to comply with the guidelines and ensure our citizens' safety. Also, the constable is available to maintain the peace if necessary. Sincerely, Hugh Donahue. Thank you.
Okay,
And so the conduct in the parking lot was inappropriate last time.
okay. Thank you, Dave.
And the guy at the concert is the constable for who? The guy that does
He-
security for
He
the,
was a constable that I guess requested. We requested a constable service and he was available to perform
who
it.
requested. That's what's not getting answered by his letter.
Okay,
The
Dave,
policing authority in the United States of America falls under elected
Okay.
officials with due authority to task police enforcement.
okay,
That's where the
Thank you.
confusion is, sir.
okay, Dave, thank you.
And I do have, if anybody is interested, I'd be more than happy to sit down with the council folks. I have some ideas in particular about,
Okay, no problem. Perhaps that would be better shared with the school district since the buses are their responsibility.
then why did you put out the flyer in the first place?
Okay, Dave.
Can I just,
Mr. Pileggi, it was all
Dave.
about covering up the threat to my son's life.
No, Dave, it was not, and you know that.
Mis-
And-
Mr.
Oh, I absolutely know what you were doing, sir, and I'm calling you out on it. You
Okay,
and Mr.
thank you,
Donahue in
thank you.
particular.
Thank you. Anyone else? Public comment? Josh, please.
Josh Torsky, 1 Cedar Grove Drive, Concord Township. I write to know request the 2019 Statement of Financial Interest that were due on May the 1st, 2020. To congratulate the 2 Johns on council. They're the only 2 out of the 7 that actually filled them out correctly. I'm curious if Mr. Donahue reviews the financial disclosure.
I do not.
That's interesting. $4,075 a month in retainer, I would
Okay.
something
Next, Josh.
that you could look, because there are glaring errors on all these statement of financial interest reports. I'll wait till next month to go through some of those, and maybe the month after that. I do want to get it on the record, though, that Mr. Pagano not yet filed, at least as of the right to know request, not in the financial part of the right to know request. So if that could be reviewed and corrected, that's the information that I have, not sent over to me.
Good point.
So
I think Pete, I think that's for the prior year, so he did not serve last year, so he wouldn't have to fill it out.
he was a candidate. So
He filled out probably one as a candidate, but we don't
That's-
have one as an elected official.
That would not be on file with Concord Township, Josh.
it needs to be filed with Concord Township.
Okay, no problem. We will look,
So there was one due that was not given to me per the right to know request. It was due May the 1st.
Okay.
So I would like to see that.
All right.
That is should be in the township's possession. Thank you.
Any other public questions, any questions? Seeing none, I'd like to move on with the agenda. Oh, wait, we have two,
I believe we
wait,
had
wait,
some.
one more thing. We have two that came in by email. One was from Gene Goebel of 7 Quaker Lane, and he mentioned, will the Concord Township be taking responsibility for the damage caused at the Newland Grits Mill Park? I would have to say no.
Excuse
That
me,
is
Tom, he wants this read precisely, so I'd like
Who's
to
that?
take Mr. Goebel.
Oh,
So if we can do that, and I'd like to make a statement also. Public comment is mandated, and it should be a part of every meeting, which it is in Concord Township. That does not mandate that there be an answer to every question. So the public can comment, and it's up to council and/or any of the officials as to whether or not they want to respond, and that's for various reasons. Mr. Goebel has made the following, or has asked that the following public comment be written or be read. Following are 3 issues-related questions to be addressed at the September 1st Concord Township Council meeting. Please read them verbatim. If Mr. Donahue is going to do the reading, which I am, please have someone following real time to check his accuracy. During the July 7th, 2020 meeting, I submitted a statement that 721 Concord Road has never paid 1 dime in property tax. Mr. Donahue misread the statement as has never been paid 1 dime in property tax. Check the YouTube video at 49-minute, 30-second mark. An apology from Mr. Donahue and the correction of the record would seem in order. Issue number 1. On August 4th, 2020, the township received 4 inches of rain over 8 hours. On August 7th, 2020, the township received 3 inches of rain over 1 hour. These rain events were well short of any historical precipitation significance. However, these non-historical rains caused historically significant damage to the Newland Grist Mill Park, which remains closed as of this writing. The following is a quote from the park's director on their website. Quote, on August 4th and again on the 7th, floods devastated the historic site and park. Water entered 5 of our buildings, wrecked trails, washed away boardwalks and bridges, and damaged parking lots. While earlier repairs to the dam held, there was damage to both the stone and earthen dams. We are still assessing the damages. The latest crisis has forced us to close the grist mill to the public because there are so many hazards. Clearly, the damage to the park was caused in no small way by the township's documented lack of adherence to township's floodplain ordinance in general, and the same at 711 Concord Road specifically. Question 1A. Will the township be taking financial responsibility for the damage caused at the new Little Grist Mill Park? By township, I don't mean the township's checkbook generated by tax-paying residents of the township. I mean coverage under the required bond described in Chapter 29/4. I, myself, am not aware of any claims being made. 1B. On August 14th, 2020, I received a letter from Mr. Donahue stating that on August 10th, 2020, a notification of violation was issued to 711 Concord Road regarding infractions of the township's floodplain conservation district. Could you please read that notice of violation to the community at the 9/1/20 council meeting? No, I will not read the notice of the violation. That's a violation that's issued to a particular individual. That's to be dealt with by the court. Please bear in mind that the park, although privately owned, is a community asset which is to be enjoyed by the public in exchange for tax-free status for the foundation. Charter of the park reads as follows: the purpose of the Nicholas Newland Foundation is to preserve its land and its historic buildings for the pleasure and education of the public. Mr. Donahue's refusal to keep me abreast of the trespass and code violations of 711 Concord Road against the Newland Grist Mill, because in Mr. Donahue's words, I don't own the park, are not appropriate. Again, Mr. Goebel, I thank you for your comments, and it is not the township's responsibility, nor would I direct the township to keep you abreast of violations that are entered against any private entity, corporation, or individual. Issue 2. During the August 4th, 2020 Township Council meeting, I expressed concerns over the old James Pool building lost to fire in 2008, but the remaining slab foundation being used as a makeshift parking lot. I was directed by Mr. Pelleggi to put my concerns in writing, and Mr. Donahue would respond. Mr. Donahue responded on 8/14/20 to me with the following: the township will not take any enforcement action regarding the parking of vehicles on the remaining slab of a building that has been demolished, as this is not a violation of the code. Although Mr. Donahue's response is superficially correct, there is no code that states you can't park on former building slab foundation. He's assuming doing so does not result in any code violation, which is not correct. Mr. Donahue failed to address that in the specific case of the old James Pool building slab, any change in its use is subject to Chapter 214-1 and 214-2 of the code, which requires adherence to Chapter 210. Since James Pool building lost all non-conforming rights to fire, the remaining slab does not retain any non-conforming rights. The following violations were presented to the township on 8/5 by myself, but remain unaddressed by the township. Any of these violations prevent the use of the parking lot in its current form on the old James Pool foundation slab. And then there's list 1 through 10 of the alleged violations, specifically 210-187B1J, 210-197, 160-44, 160-44A4, 210-96B, 210-197, 210-199K2, 210-200, 210-201, 210-121. And if I have misread anything or misquoted anything, this is all part of the record, and the public can see it on the minutes. Now, for the question, please address why the township is not enforcing the code's requirements 1 through 10 as above, as Mr. Donahue's letter failed to address. Be advised that on August the 14th, 2020, Mr. Goebel was written a letter by the township under my signature. It said to Mr. Goebel, please be advised that on March the 31st of 2020, the township issued citations regarding the lighting at 711 Concord Road. This includes the light at the rear of the office building. Also on August 10th, a notification of violation was issued to 711 Concord Road regarding infractions of Article 20, Section 187 floodplain conservation districts. 711 Concord Road has 30 days within which to comply. Finally, the township will not take any enforcement action regarding the parking of vehicles on the remaining slab of a building that had been demolished, as this is not a violation of the code. Issue 3. A multitude of false statements made by Mr. Donahue during the township's 7/7/20 council meeting when addressing my submission. He says I had questioned the township on why all the developments that have occurred at 711 Concord Road have not been subjected to the township's land development process. Knowing the township and MPC definition of saldo is somewhat vague, I referenced a Supreme Court case on the issue. Mr. Donahue apparently only read the headlines and not the entire opinion from Justice Castile, despite my having provided it to Mr. Donahue at his request. Had Mr. Donahue read the entire opinion, he may have learned what the case law is. Had Mr. Donahue read the entire opinion, he may have gotten a better understanding on exactly what qualifies as land development in the state of Pennsylvania. The Justice's opinion applies to far more than specific billboard case, because it was a billboard case. It provides a determination on what factors drive land development. Those development factors impacting in density of use, roadways, parking facilities, etc., all applied to 711 Concord Road. Mr. Donahue advised the audience that the township has addressed on various occasions a number of my concerns. Mr. Donahue characterized our conversation as, we've agreed with you on some issues and disagreed on others. This is a complete mischaracterization on Mr. Donahue's part. Yes, we've communicated a number of times on a number of issues. No, I don't bring my opinion to the table because I know my opinion is of no consequence. I bring code language and documentation only. Mr. Donahue largely ignores, delays, or skirts the facts in the code of Concord Township. I inquired what the township's mitigation plan was for 711 Concord Road, since the township has consistently allowed the code to be ignored. Mr. Donahue's response was the township does not own the land, so there is no mitigation plan. Pointless response. The township must take ownership of their own code. The noted violations will never become conforming. Mr. Donahue simply adds to his billable hours by delaying the required enforcement. Question 3A. Exactly. How do you feel 711 Concord Road is exempt from the Land Development Section 107B of the MPC regarding the improvements that have occurred since the 1998 Hootman Survey? Considering all that is required to trigger land development per code, is the improvement of one lot of land for any purpose involving a single non-residential building proposed initially or cumulatively, regardless of the number of occupants or tenure? How is the conversion of the old mill to a restaurant not land development when it impacts parking, added a second unpermitted violating driveway to a state road, added significant impervious coverage in a floodplain, and added impervious coverage on the lands of a public park? Friends, not my opinion. Find a competent engineer to scale the Hootman survey and bring a tape measure on the site. 3B, how is it appropriate for Mr. Donahue to address himself to me as Big Dog? I could not find the phrase in my dictionary, so I Googled the term and found the following in the Urban Dictionary. The big dog is the shot caller and will whoop the ass of anyone present who does not fall in line. First of all, be advised that big, but that big,
Go.
that the
Dave, we're done. Let him speak. We're
that
trying to
big
get-
dog at the big dog at DonahueLabrum.com is a email address. That was named for two reasons. I had a German Shepherd for many years named Heidi, and she was the big dog, and that hence got the name. Also, be advised that my grandchildren call me the big dog, hence the big dog address. But I thank you, Mr. Goebel, for your comments, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. The other comment we have, or we have other public comment to finish, Dave. No, Dave, no. No more rebuttals tonight. Dave, no more rebuttals tonight. You had your chance. Thank you. The other comment we had was from a Jared Mayer of Governor Markham Drive, who sent us an email, and he had a question regarding the 35 acres on Baltimore Pike between Thornton Road and the Chop Building. And the sale price for this property is $12.4 million. He was wondering if the township had considered this land for an open space purchase. Additionally, Amanda, he had a question. Amanda, he had a question, Mr. Mayor, regarding the $508,300 that was paid out to the Open Reserve Fund for debt service. Why is this coming out of the Open Space Reserve Fund?
Sure, that was pretty much how your open space fund was put together. So I believe that referendum was done because you were borrowing monies, and as such, you pay the debt out of that service as part of the tax monies that comes in. So there'll always be debt service out of that fund. Additionally, there can be maintenance and other things, but that's sort of how they get set up.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, John.
Yes, thank you. So Mr. Meyer's comments or questions were regarding also the $4.6 million of assets in the Open Space Fund and Open Space Reserve Fund, asking if there are any current specific plans for these funds, and which led to his question regarding the 35 acres across from the municipal complex that's for sale. So to answer his questions regarding are there any current or specific plans for these funds, there are current plans. We have identified properties of interest. We are in confidential conversations with various landowners and continue to monitor opportunities as they both come to us as well as that we seek them. As Mr. Meyer noted, we have $4.6 million in assets in that fund, and the property that he's referenced is $12.4 million. And while we are sometimes able to leverage grants and other funding opportunities, as was noted earlier, due to the financial crisis that the state government will face this year, there will likely be fewer of those grant opportunities, and we need to be very judicious in how we identify land preservation opportunities and use the funds that we do have in reserve. So, unfortunately, the commercial properties are always going to be more expensive and more valuable and less likely to be considered for open space acquisition due to how we need to best be good stewards of our open space funds. Thank you.
Okay, that ends the public forum, public comment. Any old business? Seeing none. Under new business, Resolution 50 of 2020. Mr. Crossan, I think you were going to handle that one, please.
Thank you very much. And Amanda is going to pull up a slide, which we also have available, I believe, in a printed format. Always happy to share an open space acquisition in Concord Township, no matter how big, no matter how small. They all make a difference. Concord Township currently owns over 300 acres of land in the township directly. There's more land that has been preserved or is preserved in other fashions. Tonight we are pleased to adopt a resolution that authorizes the expenditure of funds for the purchase of 40 Beaver Valley Road located west of Route 202. Whereas Concord Township desires to obtain open space lands for use and the enjoyment of Concord Township citizens, and whereas the parties, Michael V. Pupio Jr. Esquire, as administrator of the estate of George L. Zeckman, the seller, and Concord Township, the purchaser, desire to enter into an agreement of sale for approximately 1.75 acres, though I will correct that to be 1.32 acres, of real property located at or about 40 Beaver Valley Road, Chadds Ford, Concord Township, Pennsylvania, as described in the survey attached hereto as Exhibit A. And whereas Concord Township has received an appraisal for the property appraising the value thereof at $150,000, a copy of the appraisal is attached hereto. And whereas the parties have agreed to purchase the property by Concord Township for $110,000 pursuant to terms and conditions substantially in the form of agreement in the agreement of sale attached hereto as Exhibit C. Now therefore be it resolved this day that Concord Township Council accepts and approves the terms and conditions as outlined in the agreement of sale and authorizes the township manager to execute said agreement of sale substantially in the form attached as Exhibit C, and instruct the township professionals to conduct the necessary surveys and reviews to authorize the payment for said purchase with capital reserve funds. Mr. President, I so move.
That's a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions or discussion? All those in favor, go ahead.
I would just point out that this land could have been, had the potential development for to be subdivided into 3 single-family homes, and its preservation obviously prevents that, those homes from being built. This land is part of the Beaver Valley, the Brandywine watershed, and part of the supporting landscape for the Beaver Valley Woods area, which is identified as an area of significance in the Delaware County Natural Heritage Inventory. And furthermore, it protects the viewshed as you drive down Beaver Valley Road to enter into what will be part of the First State National Historic Park. So for all of those strategic reasons, this property was of interest to us, and I am happy to say that we are moving forward with this preservation.
I think you said you might have had a question, or are you okay?
But I am okay. My biggest concern is it going to be used for the sewage? The
No,
sewer
no.
is right across.
No.
So
Okay.
what do you think you're going to do with it? It's a beat-up
We're
house.
later on tonight, we're going to put a demolition permit in for it to just
I
make it
saw
green.
that on that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
Might
All
be a
those
pocket park.
all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, next item is Resolution 51 of 2020, which is the Extoria Act 537 Plan Revision. I think, Nate, this is a part of the stormwater sewage for Department of Environmental Inspection, Bureau of Clean Water.
Correct.
This is for the Astoria project down there
On 202.
that has conditional use approval and land development approval, and it looks as though they're getting ready to get started on construction rather shortly.
Correct.
So do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next is to authorize the advertisement of bids for the Beaver Valley Sewer Extension Project and the advertisement for the bids for the new sewer main plant chemical building. Do we have a motion to approve those bid solicitations?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mr. Gillespie, if you would handle number 5, 6, and 7, I would appreciate it, please.
Sure, in rapid fire. This is an attempt to clean up 6 projects. Number 5 is a certificate for payment, which is a final payment to Lecmonic for $25,418.86 for the dog park and volleyball courts. And number 6 is a certificate of payment number 4, which again is a final payment to Lenai Electric for $18,085.40 for LED replacement of grant projects. That would be in the form of a motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The next 4 are lines of credit or letters of credit. As I said, we're trying to clean up these projects. First one being release number 4 to Westrum Sewer Project for $667,920.67. Next one is the letter of credit final again for 157 Matson Road, LLC, the amount of $32,144.44. Third one is a bond release, which is the 18-month maintenance bond for CHOP Phase 1 for $101,701.50. The final one is a tri-party final sewer release, which is an 18-month maintenance bond for Carlino Commercial Development, the amount of $33,644.40. That's in the form of a motion.
We have a second. Second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Next is to accept the following applications for review. The demolition application for the Class 2 historic structure at the Zeckman property. Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Just as we did, yes. Okay, we have a property at 147 Cambridge Drive. Based upon the reports of the township manager and township engineer, site visits to the area of the water damage, and review of township records, it is in conclusion of the township council that the infrastructure and/or contractors of the township may have contributed to runoff erosion that damaged the Newburgh White driveway at 147 Cambridge Drive, and in good conscience, the township should assist the family with a portion of the cost of this repair. This has been going on, I think, for a number of years, Nate.
Correct.
And I think we finally made resolution with the homeowners.
Correct.
Therefore, we would request a motion to contribute $6,500 to the cost of the repairs for the Newburgh White driveway, subject to Mr. Donahue getting a full release of any liability moving forward. Correct, Mr. Donahue? So would we have a motion to do so?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Second. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Just as we did last month, we have a couple of events that are going to be coming up that we have to decide on whether to hold them, whether to downscale them a little bit as we did in some of the others, or what to handle. The first one is the Recycle Day, which I think is usually the second week in October. And normally what that constitutes is just the 2-hour one or 3-hour one. Maybe we should limit it to 2-hour regardless in light of what's going on. But anyway, at that event, if you are a Concord Township resident with proof of a driver's license, I think we take certain of your electronic devices for free. We also do the shredding event, and we also would have the district attorney if they wanted to come for the pickup of prescription drugs. Goodwill with the clothes. I think a lot of these are going to be subject to the vendor being able to service the account in light of the virus. And I just wanted to get, just as we did last time, brainstorm it a little bit, see what everybody thinks, and then figure out if we make a motion to go ahead with it as it existed or to amend it. I do think that whatever we do would have to be cautioned that it's subject to the vendor actually showing up. If the electronics guy is not doing them because of the virus, naturally we would have to advertise that that service would not be offered that day. What's everybody think?
If we're able to have our vendors present, I am in favor of having this event. We were not able to have our spring event as this was just at the outbreak of things and people were staying home. But of all of our events, this is probably the most socially distanced. Most people stay in their cars, and it does offer a service to the community. We've gotten feedback of how valuable this service is, and people would like us to hold the fall event, especially since we were not able to hold the spring event. So if our vendors are able to be there, I support
Pete?
it.
Okay. Dana?
I agree as well. A lot of people.
Okay. John?
I'm good.
Okay, I
Great
think the only
benefits that we
thing, just a
provide.
couple
gonna
of
say-
housekeeping items. We normally had the Garner Valley football team provide the manpower to carry those things out of the cars. I don't know, in the attempt to be safe, if the vendor is going to do that, we might just have to ask him to send more manpower and just have to
would-
pay them by the hour.
I would concur and say that the vendor may not want to work with the student volunteers potentially due to COVID. So I would highly suggest that we keep that to the companies if they are willing to come.
Yeah.
And keep them with their own manpower and staffing, and limit our staffing and who's there
Okay.
for that portion.
All right.
Just one item. What is the date?
have it off
I
the top
don't
of my
know.
head.
I think it's the second.
Hang on.
One of them is the 10th,
It's scheduled for
10th.
Saturday, the 10th,
Yep,
October 10th, from
that's
8
correct.
to 10 a.m.
8 to 10, so it's the 2-hour one, so that's good, so,
Is that October 10th?
yes.
Correct.
Yes.
October 10th.
Okay. I understand the need for doing it, and I don't think we should do it at all, but if the consensus is to do it, that's fine. We'll vote on it. And I just think that in light of what's going on, I would err on the side of caution, but that's why we vote. So there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Okay? And again, you'll have to get on that real quick as to what the vendors do. All right, now how about the Harvest Fest? That was usually held over at 40 Bethel Road, and they used to have a parade. They had pony rides, they had pumpkin painting, they had
Bake sale
bake
or
sale, they had the guy there with the antique farm equipment.
hay rides, face painting,
Oh,
etc.
Allison's here.
Allison's here if you want to ask her some
There you go.
questions.
And it's scheduled, it would be scheduled for on Saturday, October
Come on up to the
24th from 1 to 4 p.m.
Okay. And again, I think we'll do the same thing. We'll toss it around, and we'll come up with a solution.
So Allison did, in her Parks and Rec board, did have some discussion, and she's available tonight for any questions that anyone has. But to just summarize briefly, what they discussed was moving the event over to the Township Park, shortening the event, and eliminating some of the more high-touch, high-contact activities such as face painting, the baking contest, things along those lines, and while retaining some of the other less, close contact events such as the dog costume contest, pumpkin painting, things like that. So, so their recommendation is to keep the event at a scaled down level, move it over to the Township Park, and proceed accordingly.
Well, what Parks and Rec would like to do is still have the Harvest Festival on October 24th. Our usual time is 1 to 4, but we would like to modify it from 1 to 3. What we would like to see is something like we do already for our summer concert series and have bands, a band, and food trucks, as well as the dog costume contest that morning, Halloween costume contest. That could be a little bit iffy, but we think that it could work with the 6 feet apart. We could put X's on the sidewalk, on the walking trail. The band could play the music, and instead of parading around where they would be right close to each other, they could just be standing there for the judges to judge the costume. We also thought that a pumpkin patch would still be fun. What they could do, the children could do, is get a pumpkin and then go home and decorate it. Virtually, we could see it that way, or they could send in a picture, and we could have a contest that way for their decoration.
Similar to the old snowman contest.
Exactly,
Yeah.
just
okay.
like that same premise.
Or Captain Noah.
Was that?
I said, or Captain Noah, you send your picture to dear old.
Sure, sure. So, but we thought that would be a good idea. Trying to stay safe but still have fun. We still would like to continue it. Thinking that it would be something different over at the new park. Or the park instead of over at 40 Bethel might be a nice place with the bandstand and the new dog park instead of having to move it and the Park and Recreation Board go from one place to the other. So I've emailed council for all of the different ideas and what we have eliminated due to COVID. And if we could have your approval, we would still
Okay.
like.
One question. When I remember it being over on Bethel Road, there was some stuff that was in the building. So I guess by moving it over here, you don't have the building, so that that obstacle of perhaps not being able to maintain social distancing is going away because the whole event now is outside.
Right, all
Okay.
outdoors. The only thing that is in any kind of indoor would be us at the concession stand if we
Yeah.
chose to sell some water,
Okay.
sodas, and packaged.
John,
Additionally, too, we can have the emergency management team meet with Park and Rec and make sure that the COVID, everything's
Okay.
being adhered to.
John, you want to take a stab at a motion on this?
Yeah, I move that we continue to hold the the Harvest Fest on the date scheduled, but reduce the hours as recommended and hold a modified version of the event at the Township Park with the specific details to be still ironed out per the Parks and Board recommendation and approval, review of the plans and approval with our township staff and council. So,
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you, Allison. One other thing, and this is just coming from me. I have had the honor of being on Planning Commission and the Township Council, Board of Supervisors and Council for many, many years, and I never thought I would say this, but I think it's come a time, and I know they have this in other municipalities, where that we maybe have the solicitor consider finding for us some language that's going to put a time limit on public comment. I think that we are getting away from what it's supposed to be. I think it's usually supposed to be reserved for questions and things that are on the agenda. So I would encourage, if my colleagues agree, I think that it's time in the evolution of this township that we might have to go the route of other townships and maybe have some sort of system. So if no one objects, if we need to make a motion to direct the solicitor to maybe do some research on that and get back to us with some ideas. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions or discussion?
Well, what we'll do is the solicitor will prepare something for us to review, and we'll set the guidelines as far as how much time will be allocated.
Yeah, well, I think that one good thing about it, and having gone to other meetings, being on the other side of the dais, I have noticed that many municipalities have a system like that in place. So it's not like we have to reinvent the wheel. I think if we get various models from other towns, we might make a hybrid, or might say, hey, this one seems to be what we really want to do here, and that's what we'll do. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Amanda, I think the next bit of housekeeping is, at this meeting, we normally extend the date that we're operating under the emergency orders regarding COVID. And I think what we've done is we've always picked the Friday after the next meeting. So we would need a motion to continue to operate under the COVID orders through October 9th of 2020. We have a motion to do so. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Upcoming events, I guess most of it is the regular housekeeping things, but do want to point out on September 5th, Community Day, and it's abbreviated.
12th,
Go ahead.
the 12th. So there was just an error typo on
Sorry,
the thing.
there's a
So
typo
Community
in
Day
there.
will be next Saturday, September 12th, starting at 6:30.
I'm glad you said
going to
that.
dusk.
I never questioned her. I did one time, and took my head off.
We all make mistakes.
So Concord Community Day will commence next Saturday, September 12th at 6:30 with a concert in the Township Park on Smithbridge Road, followed by fireworks at dusk. And this will it won't conclude because we're going to have some music at the Harvest Festival, but we've had successful concerts this year, and I want to thank Allison and the Parks and Rec Board for all their hard work in putting those on this summer along with Darlington. They were
And
quite successful.
I want to thank Allison for quarterbacking the project to get the sign above the grandstand. It's very, you can notice it, it's not flashy, it's just very classy, and I'm glad we did it. So anyway, with that said, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Council members, I think we have a meeting, executive session we need to talk about, and we're going to head in the back. Thank you.